Good morning, everyone, and Happy New Year. That's right. It is 2023, and this is NFL, Full Press NFL Sunday, Week 17. And Braden, Hitman Hart Polasek is here with me, just like he is every single Sunday. And Braden, I hope those are just a style choice and not for some sort of hangover curing method or whatever.
Yeah, for sure. Figured I'd go a little bit festive for the new year, and kind of apropos. We got a lot of big games this
Mm.
weekend. So started yesterday with the college football playoff, and going to end with probably one of the best Monday night games. I think that we've probably had in a long time. So just a really good weekend of football, and can't wait to see kind of what kind of playoff implications end up getting affected the most this weekend.
Yeah, and obviously, probably the marquee matchup of the entire weekend does take place tomorrow night between the Bengals and the Bills. But to your point, there are plenty of playoff clinching scenarios this week. Um, I can't believe we're saying it, but the Buccaneers have a chance to close out the NFC South as roller coaster of a ride the season has been for Tampa and everything. It comes down to you win today against the Panthers and you're in the playoffs. As simple as that. And all the ill will from the entire season, all the struggles, all those complaints, everything like that, that's in the past. And you just move forward and try to fix things going into the playoffs. Um, it's just an incredible Sunday, and like I said, it's one of the, let's appreciate it while we can, because very soon we're getting down to, oh, there's only 8 games left, oh, there's only 4 games left in the NFL season, and that very quickly is approaching us as we now are obviously in January, but a couple other big things coming up. Obviously, Patrick Mahomes leading the league in passing. He can become the third player to twice throw for at least 5,000 yards. I believe I have the numbers right in front of me, but obviously I can't find it. 280 passing yards will get him there today against Denver. So very likely between now and at least next week, you got to figure he's going to break that 5,000 yard mark. And look, with Jalen Hurts obviously out again this week, or it seems so. He's all but had the MVP locked up. The one thing that I could see maybe throwing a wrench going into week 18, if he struggles against Denver and then everyone's fresh in their memory Monday night matchup between Joe Burrow and Josh Allen, that could have a impact on the race. But more likely than not, it looks like it's his to lose. And right now, you're going to be hard pressed to find a reason for him to lose it over the next week and a half. But that's obviously going to be a pretty big deal. And yeah, so I mean, there's a lot going on this week, and I'm pretty excited. What do you got? I guess what are you looking forward to the most this Sunday?
Yeah, I think it's maybe just the fact that there's some teams that can kind of clinch a playoff berth for the first time in a while. I think the New York Giants obviously have a really good chance against the Indianapolis Colts, led by Jeff Saturday. So just seeing them get back to the playoffs, I think, given how many coaches they kind of went through, I think every couple of years, and just a team that maybe not the most talented, but they found a way to scratch and claw through some games this year. Really start to build a foundation in Brian Dable's first year there. And then I think I got to go to the AFC East matchup. Miami's on their skid. New England, you really don't know what you're going to get from them week to week, especially on offense. So just seeing what offense between the Dolphins and Patriots can kind of take command there in Foxborough. Just seeing who can kind of break that skid and really keep their playoff hopes alive. Those are probably the two biggest headlines for me is AFC East and then the Giants in the NFC East.
Um, the Eagles I mentioned earlier will not have Jalen Hurts. However, I mentioned some records earlier, not just individual but team records are potentially set to fall. The Eagles just need 3 rushing touchdowns to surpass the Pittsburgh Steelers for most rushing touchdowns in a team during the Super Bowl era. Which, I mean, it makes sense when you consider who the quarterback is and how they football, but it is still kind of surprising that this is a record that has lasted. I mean, well, since 1976, and the Eagles are really on the cusp of breaking. And I'd imagine over the course of the next 2 weeks, they're going to get those 3 rushing touchdowns. Now, if they want to avoid any sort of, well, they did it in this amount of games, well, you might want to do it this week and not deal with that next week. So that's pretty impressive on the Eagles' behalf. Now, this is a team now that is coming off only their second loss. The injury to Justin Fields, Jalen Hurts, you got to figure isn't going to obviously matter for the rest of the regular season. But what's going to happen come playoff time? And if you were Nick Sirianni and Jalen Hurts is healthy by next week, do you play him a significant amount? Because you got to figure the Eagles are probably going to hold on to the number 1 seed. It's going to take a miracle for Dallas to win that division. But if you decide to rest him and the starters for essentially a meaningless game, you could be risking Jalen Hurts not playing football for over a month. And I don't know if I like that, regardless of who the quarterback is, trying to stay healthy or not. So what's your opinion on that? Do you really want to see, for the Eagles, do you really want to see Jalen Hurts get some snaps in before the season's over?
I think so, and I think it's kind of his style of play. I think that I would really want to kind of take into account if I'm Nick Sirianni, where you've kind of seen him, work in structure. There's been a lot of throws that I want to say kind of seem more easy than they should be deep down the field. So I think there's a lot of things on just kind of working those short to intermediate throws, and I think they finish with the Giants. So just kind of putting him in a position where he's going to see a lot of blitzes, a lot of man coverage. I just think there's certain aspects to his game where we're kind of trying to keep him in structure, and running the offense to kind of the way you want to see it done. I think that's where I would want to definitely play him next week.
Yeah, and if anything, like I said, just to get the feel for the game a little bit. I mean, because you're going to have that time off during the first round of the playoffs. Again, assuming a miracle doesn't happen and they somehow lose both of these games, and I don't know exactly what the scenarios need to happen, but there is a situation where they lose that number 1 seed. It just seems very unlikely. So, anyways, I mentioned earlier also the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, and they've been a topic of discussion for quite some time on this show because, well, they're kind of an enigma. I mean, what are they? We don't know. It's week 17, and we still have no idea what they are. Well, we can know by the end of tonight whether or not they're the NFC South champions. Which, again, all that needs to happen is a win. It doesn't matter if it's 3-2 or 54-53. They win, and they're the NFC South champion, and it would be for the second year in a row, which would be the first time, talk about things that haven't happened since 1976. It would be the first time in Buccaneers franchise history that they've won the division in back-to-back seasons, and that seems pretty remarkable. But knowing what you know about the Buccaneers franchise before pre-2020, there wasn't a lot to choose from outside of 2002 and the early 2000s defense that was really, really good. Other than that, there's a lot of misfortune and disappointment there. But no, at the end of the day, look, the Buccaneers with a win will erase all not the problems, but the talk of the regular season. I mean, the problems will still exist, and they're not going to go away come playoff time. They're going to have to figure them out. But a win could go a long way in building some of that confidence, and it certainly assures them a chance to compete in the playoffs and not watch their season end next week. Talking about records, Tom Brady right now leads the league with 443 completions, which sounds like a lot because it is a lot, and it's the 5th most right now all time. Obviously, he set the record last year with the number is 485. So, that's well in range for him to break that record again. It kind of shows that Tampa relies quite a bit on his arm. It's going to be interesting to see how they approach Carolina, who all of a sudden is playing a lot better football, certainly at the, better football from the last time they met. And the last time they met, Carolina won. So the Buccaneers, this is not going to be an easy matchup for them. But the prospect of it being a hat and T-shirt game, if they win, might be enough to motivate them to maybe put their best game forward. I guess do you believe in the possibility that Carolina can win this game and go on and win this division? It doesn't clinch the division if Carolina wins today, but it would obviously put them well in the driver's seat heading into the final week of the season.
Yeah, I think I do believe they can win this game, and I think it's just I think they're doing the little things right now, not really having to rely a lot on Sam Darnold, who's turned out to be the quarterback that out of all the ones they've used this year, he's had the best performances. But I think just relying on the running game, and I think the young talent that they have on defense, they can kind of be a versatile and multiple team with that young talent on D. So I think they have a good shot at least to give Tampa Bay a run for their money and maybe win this game. I just think the only thing that would worry me a little bit is the offensive line of Carolina. It seems like Tampa Bay's at least started to get a little bit of momentum going as far as more pressures the last couple of weeks and really trying to find their top guys without Shaq Barrett. So that would be my biggest worry. But I think they have the ingredients with the running game and the young defense to at least to win this one and have a good shot to maybe win this division.
Yeah, I mean the one silver lining for the Buccaneers is that after a while they seem to finally they seem to be starting to get a little healthier. Vita Vea is getting healthier. You have a little bit better health on the offensive line. Tristan Wirfs could be back in there today, and then of course the news earlier in the week that Ryan Jensen returned to practice, which obviously opens up the window for him to return. Obviously not today, but his importance would be crucial for this team, for a playoff run to kind of maybe bring some. Just some balance to this offensive line and maybe bring them all together at the right time. So yeah, it's going to be a big matchup. And again, I mean, if you're the Buccaneers, you can erase a lot of anxiety by just winning this game and not worrying about the fact that you're 8-8, just worrying about the fact that you're the NFC South champion. So, all right, before we get into our game picks, like we do each and every week, the big news coming is Jarrett Stidham will be getting his first start with the Raiders as Derek Carr has been sent to the bench and obviously has since left the team in a mutual decision by both player and the team. I'll ask you because again, I mean, I it's a lot of people coming out and defending Derek Carr and teammates are obviously sticking up for the guy, and I get that, and I'm not bemoaning that at all, but I think people are tricking themselves into believing that this guy was something that he wasn't because we talk about Derek Carr. Is he going to take that next leap? Well, they went out, they got Devontae Adams. They've had some good players around him throughout his career on offense, at least. Doesn't mean he's always been in the best situation, but when you look across his career, you look at one season that he won double-digit games for the Raiders. And other than that, it's been a lot of mediocrity. He's leading the league right now in turnovers. So do I think Jarrett Stidham is the future quarterback? Absolutely not. But it's very clear in my mind that Derek Carr's run as the starting quarterback of the Raiders was over. And I don't want to mix in his, him as a person versus him as a football player, because I think a lot of people do that. Well, he's a good guy. He's a great teammate. He cares. Yeah, all that stuff's true. And that's great. And that makes him certainly going to be a relatively hot commodity on the open market when it gets to that point. But the bottom line is the guy's a mediocre quarterback at best. And he has moments where he looks elite, but many more moments where he just doesn't rise to the occasion. And we know that position is a position where you need to rise to the occasion more often than not just time and time again. And again, like I said, Derek Carr wasn't doing that even in the slightest, let alone to the level that you expect an elite quarterback. So obviously, he's a guy who can go and help a team because there's a lot of teams out there that have a lot of bad quarterback play. We've seen a lot of bad quarterback play in general this season. So in your mind, where do you think the best landing spot for Carr is? Because The situation with Oakland is 3 days after the Super Bowl, he has $40 million guaranteed. So you're either going to trade him or very likely you're going to see him released. So assuming he has pick of the of any team that he want that would want him, where do you think the best landing spot is for Derek Carr?
Yeah, I think it comes down to a couple for me. I think it's either Washington or the Jets, and I'd probably lean the Jets personally, just because even though I think, like you said, he's not been consistent and rising to the occasion, I think you kind of just need that stable veteran kind of leadership in the locker room in New York. And I think just given what that roster already has, I don't think he has to go out and be necessarily the best quarterback in the league week after week. So I think this is kind of just a situation for the Jets where you can kind of get a veteran bridge quarterback, quote unquote, and just see where it kind of takes you for maybe a year to 2 years, maybe even 3 years. And I think just kind of ride the wave of him being more of maybe just a distributor of the football instead of just having to be a guy that carries the team on his back. So I think the Jets is kind of where I would lean, just because I don't know if you can kind of turn to a young option necessarily if you're New York right now.
Yeah, and look, the Jets. I mean, they're very well in the mix for the playoffs still. So this is a team that's really right on the cusp, and we talked about them a lot this season. We like Robert Saleh. We like the defense. We think there's a lot of nice pieces in place offensively. It's just a matter of the quarterback play, and obviously Zach Wilson is not the answer. Mike White, a nice player, certainly going to give them a boost today, but I have no clue, and I'm sure the Jets have no clue whether or not he's a long term solution. So to your point, you go out and you get a guy, a veteran, who I think a majority of the Jets' current situation, based on the majority of situations that he faced in Oakland slash Vegas, I think is better. So again, is it going to lead to a deep playoff run for the Jets? I don't think so. But bringing stability to that position may be the best option for the Jets, who you just need to find some footing here. You can't, lose grip of potentially turning this franchise around. And that's not to say that Derek Carr is going to be the guy to turn the Jets around. That's not going to happen. But he can at least maybe help lay that foundation for this team to really take the next step. And that's going beyond just a 1 or 2 year run where you're like, oh, they kind of won some good games and maybe they can make a run. So I like the Jets. Again, I mean, what team? I mean, is it going to be Tampa? Could Tampa go out and get Derek Carr? I mean, it depends on what happens with Brady, whether he retires or goes elsewhere. I don't know. I think Miami may. I mean, if Miami's going to go for a quarterback, they're gonna swing for the fences. They're not going to go from Tua to Derek Carr. So that's probably out of the question. I mean, again, if you're Miami, you probably want Tom Brady. You want like a guy like Aaron Rodgers, one of those veterans that are going to bring a team that has as much talent together. That's the type of thing. If not, you're sticking with Tua. Um, yeah, I mean, it makes sense. Maybe the Giants.
Right.
Uh, again, Daniel Jones is not the answer in New York, so perhaps that other New York team, throws their hat in the mix. I don't see him going to a situation like, say, Arizona and being like the starter until Kyler Murray comes back. So I don't see that as an option. And I guess Indianapolis is where veteran quarterbacks past their prime go to die. So perhaps Indianapolis is a choice. I mean, that might have just shot up to the top of my list because what their pattern of history the last couple seasons. So either way, look, I feel bad for the person anytime any person loses their job or gets cut, because there's always that human element of it all. But I don't care about teammates talking about, oh, he gave it all his all. Well, if he did, then we know his all is just not good enough. And,
Right.
this is a results based business and he just wasn't getting results. So it'll be interesting to see what happens with the Raiders. I mean, it's very clear that Josh McDaniels is safe for many reasons. He still has to prove himself. I don't think he's done anything to disprove himself, unlike his time in Denver. His very short time in Denver. But he really has to, now that this is on him, he's getting his quarterback, or he will go get his quarterback. Much more pressure is on Josh McDaniels moving forward.
Yeah, and I just think of all the possibilities. I think it's just endless for them. I think you talk about maybe a Miami going out and swinging the fences. I think Vegas is kind of right in that boat where I think if there was kind of a top team that could lure, obviously a Tom Brady or try to swing a big trade with the Ravens for Lamar Jackson. That just feels like it's something in the Raiders' DNA right now as they're kind of going through a massive quarterback change for the first time in nearly a decade. So I think there's a lot of options. I wouldn't rule out them drafting a quarterback either. We'll see kind of how the board plays. There's going to be a lot of I think different permutations that come depending how the draft order sets. But wouldn't rule out Josh McDaniels drafting another guy similar to how he did with Tim Tebow in Denver.
Yeah, and one of the things that the Patriots always did, regardless of having Tom Brady in the center, was they were always drafting quarterbacks. Now they weren't in the first, second, or third round, but they constantly drafted and developed young quarterbacks, most of which didn't really pan out to any sort of long-time starter, but they were valuable backups in a lot of situations and have come in and won games in the NFL. So, all right. Speaking of winning games, we're going to pick the winners of this week. I'm assuming we're going to have a few more one-score games this weekend, considering we've had 108 so far through 15 weeks, or 16 weeks rather, which is a record, which by far a record already. So now, if only I had my picks in front of me, we could get started. All right, here they go. Here we go. All right, here we go. All right, we're going to start right in Philadelphia. We have the Saints heading to Philadelphia to take on the Eagles. I like the Eagles in this one because, again, I mean, Jalen Hurts makes them a championship Super Bowl caliber team. Gardner Minshew is perfectly capable of maintaining a certain level of eliteness with this Eagles team, and I think they take care of business against New Orleans.
Yeah, I think just how this team is built, it's kind of everything that can really stop. I think New Orleans' top options at this point with a Chris Olave or Alvin Kamara. I think they're just so physical, so tough, and even with the win today, the Eagles will kind of still be helped out with the Saints' loss with having their first round pick next year. So it's kind of a win-win for Philly today if they get the job done.
Next, we have the big NFC South matchup between the Buccaneers and the Panthers. The Bucs at home. I think they take care of business. Like I've been saying all show, that you win this game, you guarantee yourself a division title for the second time in a row, first time in franchise history, and you get a playoff berth, and that changes everything. All of a sudden, the playoffs are the playoffs. You can forget about the past, you can forget about the regular season. It doesn't matter if you're 8-8 or 8-9. If you go on and win some playoff games and go to a Super Bowl, that's all that matters. So I think Tampa Bay, who is getting a little bit healthier and has had some good moments over the last couple weeks, I think they take care of business at home.
Yeah, I'm gonna go with the Panthers here. Obviously, crazy to probably pick against Brady at this point in the season, but I think it's just kind of been that wacky of a year. Maybe I'm just kind of clinging to that mantra that it's just kind of been so many upsets and so many weird things happening that maybe this Bucks team just misses out. So I'll go with Carolina today.
Well, speaking of wacky, we got Miami heading to New England. 8-7 Miami against 7-8 New England. Miami's in the last wild card spot right now. New England's just knocking on the door. So, as crazy as it sounds, the Patriots are still in it, and the Dolphins have just hit an absolute wall or cliff or whatever you want to call it, because they've lost 4 in a row. Tua looks like he's regressed a lot, and he's not even playing this week now. You're going to get Teddy Bridgewater, and we saw earlier in the season that this team was just not the same with other guys under center, and lately they haven't looked the same even with Tua. So I, it doesn't mean I have a whole hell of a lot of confidence in the New England Patriots, but at home, I mean, there's been a lot more downs than ups over the last few years, as expected when you move on from Brady. But I think that the Patriots need their big moment, at least for the thing. Like, come on, like win this game and like make week 17 meaningful, all right, or week 18 meaningful. And I think they do. I think the Patriots going to pull this off by like 1 or 2 points. I don't know, because they're down to like their fifth, sixth string defensive back against these receivers, but I don't know. Go Pats.
I went with the Pats as well. I think it's just kind of one of those things with Miami. It seems like every time they're in this spot the last couple of years, they just seem to not finish the season strong. Of course, Tua's health, not really helping factors there, but just seems like there's always this kind of end of season skid, and it just seems like not just the offense but defensively, there's some things that they're just not picking up on right now. So. I think the Patriots will find a way in kind of a grinding style of game.
All right, next we have Cleveland at Washington. I went with the Browns. I don't know, Washington. Honestly, I think, and again, I'm not trying to defend Deshaun Watson. It's the last thing I want to do. He hasn't been good. He's been terrible, actually, for the most part. But I do think a lot of that has to do with rust. I just get the feeling, my gut's telling me that Cleveland's going to somehow pull this off on the road against Washington. Washington obviously going back to Carson Wentz, so they have some uncertainty at the quarterback position, having going back and forth the last over the course of the season. So with all those factors, I think Cleveland might come in and steal one from Washington.
I'm right in the same headspace as you. It's maybe just Washington's history that is maybe putting a little pause. That they're in this playoff spot. They got a little bit of help last week, but I don't know if it's just maybe the style of play, the running game, the defense. Cleveland's actually kind of played better defensively lately, so taking a shot in the dark in this one. I'll go with the Browns.
All right, next we have the Giants hosting the Colts. The Giants are looking to clinch their playoff berth, and beating the Colts is a first step in doing that. I like the Giants at home. Again, I don't anticipate any sort of long playoff run like maybe what happened back in 2007 or 2011, but I do like this team outside of the quarterback position, and I think winning and eventually, hopefully, clinching a playoff spot is going to go a long way in how they develop for next year and years after. So I like the Giants here against the Indianapolis team, who just isn't good. I mean, it is what it is. They're just not a good team right now, and I like the Giants.
Yeah, not a whole lot to add to there. It's just so many holes I think to fix, and Nick Foles obviously just doesn't have really that magic right now, and just a team that's kind of I think ready to go into the off season and kind of retool. A lot of guys beat up with injuries, so I don't know if it'll be close or not, knowing how the Giants can kind of be in some games, but I think New York will pull it out.
All right. Next, we have Jacksonville at Houston. Jacksonville, again, one of the surprise teams this year. I think we've seen a lot of growth, obviously, from their quarterback, Trevor Lawrence. Houston, the opposite of growth. In fact, they've shrunk and continue to shrink, and really that's been their MO as a franchise. Sorry, Houston Texans fans, if there are any out there, but it's just not good. And going up against a fairly hot Jacksonville Jaguars team, I'm going to go with the Jags.
I did not realize going into this game, Houston's actually won 9 in a row over the Jags entering Sunday. So that kind of I think is going to motivate the Jaguars even more. Should have probably beat them early in the season. Did not get the job done, and even as competitive as Houston's been lately, I think the Jaguars are just on a roll that's kind of unstoppable right now. At least in terms of just I think playing the game the right way. So I went with the Jaguars here.
All right, next we have Chicago heading to Detroit, another team that's surprisingly still in the mix in Week 17. Detroit. I like the Lions here. The underlying, and I've been trying to search. I had everything highlighted, and somehow I've lost the numbers. But Justin Fields is what we talked about records earlier. Justin Fields is just a handful of rushing yards away from moving into second place all time in quarterback rushing yard seasons, which is pretty impressive. And I think he'll get there. eventually. And if I can tell you the exact number, I can tell you with confidence whether or not he'll do it today because, well, as much as we like seeing the Lions succeed, they're really good on offense. They're okay on defense, and they can certainly give up some points in yards. So I anticipate Chicago being able to do a little something, but I don't know. It's just not going to be enough for them to win the game. I think Detroit runs away with this one, and unfortunately, I did not find those numbers, so we'll just have to move on, and I'll try to chime in later with it.
Yeah, it's one of those games I almost wanted to go the Bears, just because it feels like one where they're kind of due. They've been close, in some weeks, given some teams some of their best shots, but just kind of feels like a perfect scenario against this opponent for the Lions to bounce back, get a sweep in the division. So I went with Detroit, kind of looking for them to play a lot more sound this week for sure.
All right. Next, we have Denver at Kansas City. Look, Denver they're not going to win this game. I think, and you'll back me up on this. What you want to see from the Chiefs is a quarters 1 through 4 of great offense and not struggling against a far inferior team. And it doesn't mean I'm talking watching them or allowing them to score the most the most points that by far they've scored all season. But I'm saying don't let them dictate what the Chiefs do on offense. And that's something that teams can do sometimes. And that's, if you're going to nitpick and try to find flaws in this Chiefs team, that's going to be one of them. This is fine tuning time. They know if they win this game, they're still in the hunt for the #1 overall seed, but they have to focus more on what they have to do better. So I'm clearly not going to take Denver, and there's nothing that would ever convince me to take Denver. So from a analytical standpoint, I want to see what Kansas City's offense can do consistently from quarters 1 through 4, and hopefully they can build off that heading to the playoffs. So a very long way of saying the Chiefs.
Yeah, one thing I kind of wrote about at the end of the week was just kind of Chiefs needing to keep it simple this week. I think especially on offense, coming off the few turnovers that they had in that game in Denver early in the season. I think it's just kind of one of those where you have to be willing to just get those cheap yards any way possible, not necessarily being too flashy and trying to make things maybe harder than they have to be, which Kansas City can do sometimes. So I think just getting out of this one as clean as you can and making it look a little bit more simple. That's kind of what I'm hoping to see from Kansas City today. Denver, of course, it's always weird. Teams seem to get interim coach bumps, right after they fire coaches, but this is not the same kind of situation as some of those teams usually get. So I think the Chiefs will win. It's just what kind of Denver team is going to show up today.
Yeah, you really just want to see a 60-minute performance start to finish without any sort of glaring, doesn't mean score in every possession, but you don't want to see these long lulls
Right.
during the game against, like I said, just a far inferior team. Speaking of inferior teams, Arizona at Atlanta. I took the Falcons, and I have really no reason other than Arizona, I think, is starting their third string quarterback. And, well, yeah, that's about it. So give me Atlanta at home.
Yeah, not a lot of confidence either in mine. I went the Falcons as well, and not just third string quarterback. I think DeAndre Hopkins was downgraded to out. It's kind of interesting, maybe a possible trade for him in the offseason. I know there's been buzz that he could be moved, so who knows if he's maybe played his last snap with the Cardinals, but probably going to be a close one coming down to the end. I went with the Falcons today.
Next, San Francisco at the Raiders. Jarrett Stidham, welcome to the Raiders starting job with a matchup against the #1 defense. And by #1 defense, I mean they're just the #1 defense in just about everything. This 49ers team obviously will only go as far as their quarterback takes them. And so far, he's played, Brock Purdy has played well enough to give this team confidence heading into the playoffs. Doesn't mean it's going to last. And certainly, a great defense isn't going to make up for subpar quarterback play. So, 49ers, you hope he builds a little bit of confidence. A pretty porous Raiders defense today, and I do like the 49ers in this one. I don't know how big the win's going to be in terms of a spread, um, but I like San Francisco to win comfortably.
I do as well. I think there's definitely a chance that San Francisco could also maybe get a shutout in this one. I know it's not obviously very common even for some of the best defenses, but this just seems like a matchup where they should kind of hold the Raiders to very minimal, scoring chances and minimal yards. So I don't think it'll be close. I got San Francisco.
Next, we have the Jets and Seattle. We have Mike White obviously making his return. So I like that a lot for the Jets. I think they're going up against the Seattle team, who's obviously taken a big step back from the first half of the season. And yeah, so I like the Jets even on the road against the 12s.
I would like to see that happen. I went with Seahawks. I didn't really have a lot of confidence either way. I think maybe just part of this Jets magic maybe has run its course and for this season anyway. And I think just having to go to Seattle is maybe one of the few reasons that I decided to go with the Seahawks. I think Tyler Lockett's also back today, so maybe that helps Geno Smith out a bit against his old team.
All right, next we have the Rams at the Chargers. Uh, I mean, I took the Chargers because obviously they're obviously still in the mix. They've been playing a lot better football as of late, and the Rams are the Rams. Uh, I think it's going to be a close game. I don't know. Something tells me this is going to be one of those games where it's like the Chargers are going to be fighting for their lives towards in the fourth quarter, and they'll eventually pull it out. But you're going to be sitting there saying, "Wow, the Rams kept it that close." I think Baker Mayfield obviously has brought a little bit of stability to the quarterback position. Obviously, injured Matt Stafford and whatever else they trotted out there was not cutting it. Um, but I don't think it's going to be good enough to beat the Chargers this week.
Yeah, it's kind of it's another week like last week where the Chargers, obviously clinched a playoff spot already. I don't think it would be a shock to maybe see them win a road playoff game, but you still don't really know what this team is. I don't know if you're really going to find it out this week either. So it's kind of one of those where I think you just, if you're a Chargers fan, just see Justin Herbert kind of continue to kind of have those dominant performances, kind of leading the team through his arms. So I think that's what I'd be looking for today if I was a Chargers fan. I think they'll win, but not really sure if it'll be a dominant one for LA.
Next, we have a pretty big matchup in the NFC North with Minnesota heading to Green Bay, and Green Bay is surprisingly still in this. Um, no, not in the division, but obviously in order to be able to clinch a playoff spot, they have to win these games against Minnesota and then Detroit next week. Uh, I like Minnesota in this one. I mean, I know, the Packers are playing with a lot of confidence and kind of playing pretty loosely now. That tends to happen when you kind of feel like you're out of it and there's really no one expecting you to make a run. So you kind of play with a little bit of house money. Talked about 101 score games this season. Well, Minnesota is responsible for 7 of those, which is an NFL record for an individual team in a single season. I think it's going to be another one score game, but this is another one that they're the better team overall. They might not have a quarterback, but I think just Minnesota top to bottom is a far better team than Green Bay. So I like Minnesota to kind of put an end, unfortunately, to the Packers' improbable march towards the playoffs.
That's kind of the angle I went with. I think this run has to end. I think right now for Green Bay, it just doesn't seem like it can really happen that they can maybe make the playoffs, even as wacky as the season has been. So I think it'll come to an end today. Minnesota, I think like you said, I think it'll probably be a close game, another one score game. But they've actually seemed to do pretty well at Green Bay the last few years, and I think that continues here.
Next, we have Pittsburgh at Baltimore. In years past, that would have been a pretty marquee matchup. Not so much this year. I mean, Lamar Jackson's not playing. This Ravens team really hasn't been that good all season. They had a nice stretch at one point, but and obviously the Pittsburgh Steelers just really haven't been a real relevant franchise the last years. But you always get a nice treat when you get see these two teams face off, and you kind of hope that they go back a few years and kind of give you that great marquee matchup on Sunday Night Football, one that we seem to get each and every year between these two teams. So at the end of the day, though, I took Pittsburgh. I like their defense a little bit better, and that's really kind of what it comes down to.
I went with Pittsburgh as well, and I guess it's maybe the same angle that I took with Green Bay. Is this kind of run of finding ways to win games when it's not necessarily your best performance from Baltimore? I think that just kind of has to come to an end, maybe in this kind of division matchup. And there's just something about Mike Tomlin not having a losing season yet that I think he's going to just find a way to scratch out these last couple of games and kind of keep that record going. So I like the Steelers.
All right, and since we don't normally do it, but it's such a big matchup on Monday Night Football, we are going to pick the last game of the week in Buffalo at Cincinnati. Really, I mean, the storylines write themselves. Obviously, the number one seed is really kind of is going to be either won or lost this week, because this is Buffalo goes on to play New England the last week of the season, and they can pretty much wrap it up with a win against Cincinnati, and more than that, just kind of establish themselves, because I know it's funny watching the fan bases of Cincinnati, Kansas City, and Buffalo kind of just constantly going at each other. This is better than this. This is better than that because of this. Well, at the end of the day, Buffalo have, if they win this week, will have beaten both Kansas City and Cincinnati. Two of they're obviously closest rivals and competitors, and two of the other teams in the AFC most capable of making a Super Bowl run. And I think that would go a long way in kind of propelling them, or setting them up for playoff success in just a couple weeks. So I think this is going to be a fantastic game. I think this is one of those games that's going to live up to the hype. Doesn't mean it's going to be a high scoring game. It just means that you're going to see some really good football, probably a game that's going to come down to the wire. And in that case, I'm going to take Buffalo, because they've won a lot of games that way. They've shown that they can win in a lot of uncomfortable situations, whether it's poor weather, injured quarterback, whatever. I like them in this game. I don't think it's going to say anything negative about Cincinnati, but I think it's going to give Buffalo a huge boost heading into the postseason.
I went with Cincinnati here, and it's not even really just rooting for the Bills to lose and the Chiefs to get to the one seed. I think I just have this belief that Cincinnati's a slightly better team overall. Just I think a little bit more well rounded, and kind of the mistakes they can clear up. So I think it's just me trying to want to see if just my studies and stuff like that about this team is kind of correct, and seeing if they can come out and win another game like this at home, with them still having a chance themselves to get the number one seed. So I think it's just kind of wanting to believe in what I've thought here the last few weeks, and I had to take the Bengals in the end with that.
Well, that's going to do it. Wrapping up our January 1st show, and the second and last week of the NFL regular season. So we will be back next for our last regular season broadcast as we get prepared for the playoffs. But until then, enjoy your January 1st, enjoy your New Year's Day, and enjoy a hopefully great slate of Sunday football. So thank you everyone for tuning in. Be sure to give us a follow at Full Press NFL, at Full Press Radio, and of course, head over to fullpresscoverage.com to check out all the latest and greatest. So thank you everyone, and we will talk to you soon.